Welcome to the Age of Fission radio show with your host, Lonnie Clark. We stand together and accept that we now live in a world transformed by Fukushima. From 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time here on UCY.TV radio. We relentlessly engage every ear that listens. We expose and confront the complete lack of accountability for the nuclear industry. Consider social engineering programs who view our bodies, minds, and souls as assets on a balance sheet. We discuss vital current issues, interview activists, and engage our audience in an effort to allow all voices to be heard. The Age of Vision radio show creates a venue that all will choose. We encourage our listeners to reclaim their power and their courage to take action and save our planet from the ravages of greed and indifference. Our actions matter. Every voice matters. We remind our listeners that happiness is resistance. Love is greater than fear.
Good morning, UCY.TV listeners, as well as public radio listeners. My name is Jerome, and I am the Sane Environmentalist. Or at least I like to call myself that. At any rate, I hope everybody's happy. Today is the third month, 7th day, 2018. We are 4 days away from a big event in my life, which is the anniversary of Fukushima. You know, and the remembrance of that, hopefully to not forget that, because I think that's a very important thing and needs to be recognized. That was the day that the world ended as far as Japan is concerned. There is enough radiation there to where Japan will become eventually pretty much unlivable. I don't see how they're going to get even more problems than they have now from it as time goes on. You know, the latest from the reactors is 500 sieverts an hour at the pedestal. And I don't know if they're actually getting any, but I'm sure they are. They're getting neutron radiation, so they're steadily degrading the concrete of the containment facilities and the fuel ponds and all that with neutron radiation and higher doses of it than, well, probably not higher doses than an active reactor, but still, you know, there's a phenomenon in materials that occurs at nuclear power plants wherein they fail. Hardening occurs, spalling occurs, creep occurs in metals, plastics, and other synthetic materials. Radiation literally dissolves rubber, turns it to goo. It's silicon, it's a little better, but not really. So there, you know, seals and everything have to be constantly maintained. That's the whole idea behind having a crew there. However, if you have an ambient radiation level of 540 sieverts an hour, well, you're not getting any crew in there for a minute, a little hot minute. You know, you might be able to pump concrete in there and kind of suffocate the thing in concrete like they did Chernobyl, but Not really, and at the same time, sea levels are rising, and so we're going to have bigger problems at Fukushima than we do now. Think about that. Sea levels are rising. They will continue to rise, and there's going to be a dramatic increase, I think, in sea level rise. I think there is a force feedback, a positive feedback loop occurring in the Arctics on both ends of the planet, wherein they are heating up and melting, pretty much. Today I did a video on YouTube. I suggest everybody check it out. And I just did the North Pole with Google Earth Pro, and I used the time index slider function and went back and forth through time, and I was able to actually see quite a significant amount of ice pack loss on the northern end of the planet in the big picture overall, like a climate changing amount of ice pack melt. As part of that, I'm sure, are some beautiful flower-filled valleys. Don't get me wrong. But still, where you did have ice, now you have a flower-filled valley. And it's happened pretty quickly. I'm actually kind of surprised. And keep in mind again that we have giant, massive pockets of methane gas trapped in a gel form under the Greenland ice sheet. And if that puppy melts, then pretty much that's going to mean methane geysers and volcanoes on our planet. Doesn't sound very pleasant to me. So please, if you feel like calling in, please call in. I don't know how I can hear you. I guess I can see you because I've got a plug-in lapel mic that I'm using right now. So the call-in number here is 1-718-717-8296. And I want to kind of cover today a little bit about Fukushima, and again, it is a monument to humanity. I mentioned that in yet another video this week, that our monuments of this iteration of humanity are going to be, instead of great pyramids and stone obelisks and inscriptions carved in stone, which is how other people have in the past on this planet left future generations a message. Ours is going to be a radioactive melted core. Basically, we got that we know of 4 of them on this planet. We got 3 at Fukushima, and we got 1 in Russia. There's probably more than that. I'm sure there's more than that, but still, that's 4 of them. And you have a mix in the corium material of uranium and plutonium, and there are some very long-lived isotopes that exist inside of the fuel. I guess you could call it that. Spent, quote-unquote, fuel. In fact, what happens is, with spent fuel, it becomes too enriched. I know that sounds bizarre. And actually, let's take a second, okay? Maybe more than a second, 5 minutes, for a basic physics class here on the Age of Fission radio. If we're talking about fission and calling ourselves that, then we should understand what the basics of fission mean. So all matter, everything in the universe, as we know it and understand it, is made up of basically 4 different kinds of particles. So you've got protons, you've got neutrons, you've got electrons, and you've got photons. There are other particles, but those are the 4 biggies that pretty much comprise everything and make it visible. Protons have a positive electromagnetic charge. Electrons have a negative electromagnetic charge. Neutrons, however, are different. A neutron is neutral. It doesn't have a positive or a negative charge. It uses a 2/3 negative charge in a weird way with quarks to be able to hold the protons together, which is how you get a nucleon, which is a mixture of protons and neutrons in a lattice. And they form together, and this force called the nuclear force exerts from the protons because of their partial negativity-ishness. It's keep in mind, very what's the word they use? Quantum in nature. And so you could use the words ish with quantum because it isn't, it's not quantifiable. That's what they mean by that. So basically your neutrons are kind of like the glue that holds the matter together. All right. They stick together, the protons, and they stick to themselves, and they create a positively overall charged nucleus, which the electrons spin around. Okay, now the electrons are important because they connect this atom to other atoms to form all matter. Okay, in an electromagnetic detachment, basically. And so you have two forces. You have the nuclear force, and you have electromagnetic force going on at the same time. So the electromagnetic force of the core of the center of the atom is trying to constantly blow itself apart because you have all of these positively charged protons stuck together by these neutrons, okay? And they don't want to be together. Take a 20 positive magnet poles and try to stick them together at the same time and see how easy that is to do. You know, you need some kind of glue to hold them, and that's what the neutron does. Alrighty. And so neutrons are, however, fairly rare, and they generally only occur in a fissioning process or a decay process. So neutrons are the thing that causes issue and causes other things to become radioactive. So basically, that's how they build nuclear fuel. Okay, and this gets me back to where we were. All right, and so what they do is they take an already unbalanced, semi-unbalanced atom, okay, which is uranium-235, I believe, just doesn't have a good balance. It's a little bit unbalanced. And then they further imbalance it by shooting neutrons at it. And they shoot neutrons at it. And these neutrons, since they have a neutral charge, are not repelled necessarily by the nuclear force or by the electromagnetic force because they're neutral. So they stick to whatever they go through, they stick. Some of them will stick. And when they stick, what they do is they add another neutron to whatever atom or atom that they land on. Okay, and so all of a sudden, you have an imbalanced atom. And that atom, generally speaking, decays into two other sister atoms because it's unstable. And when it does, it'll emit radiation. Alpha, beta, and gamma. As well, depending on how intense the breakup is, neutrons, which will further continue the process. So nuclear fuel has all of this. And what happens is that they bombard this fuel with neutron radiation. You know, and every time the fuel absorbs a neutron, it also produces heat and gamma radiation and alpha beta to a certain extent. So just the process itself produces tons of heat, and hence you have a nuclear reactor. But the total, so what happens is finally you have bombarded this uranium fuel or uranium mixed oxide fuel with enough neutrons to where now all all of it is becoming really, really unstable. Like you aren't able to control it anymore. Like it's so, like imagine throwing little blobs of grease at something and then trying to, and it would just become an untenable mess and finally become unmanageable. And I think that's what it is that it finally becomes unstable and unhandleable. And it's like, okay, now we need to let it cool down. We need to let some of these neutron fission, these neutron bombardments disintegrate. Okay, and that's what you have your spent quote unquote fuel pool for, is the neutrons, or for the atoms that are created by the neutrons that are bombarding the original fuel, creating heavier and bigger and more complex atoms, which will split into other atoms, which will split into other atoms until things rest until the balance is achieved in the universe, as it were. And the electrical charges and everything of all the atoms and the weights are all right, and it just is basically nothing, just lead or matter, regular matter. So there are products that take literally millions of years that are created in this bombardment process, millions of years to disintegrate and to degrade. There are products that for hundreds of thousands of years will be deadly. So, and furthermore, despite the fact that it's not reacting anymore, okay, the fuel at Chernobyl and at Fukushima is still decaying, okay, and that's the thing, is it's a two-stage process. You have your reaction process, wherein you enrich the fuel and create fission in the enrichment process, which creates, there you go, the neutron creates more neutrons, it creates more neutrons, and all of a sudden you have a chain reaction occurring. So once you stop that, though, all of the stuff that has been created by these neutron bombardments is going to continue to decay, and there you go. You have let me look up nuclear decay products. See if I can find some in there. Nuclear decay products. Let's see what we got here. I guess maybe what you would want is not the decay process, but a list of nuclides. Okay, list of radionuclides. Ooh, howdy, there's a big one. There's close to 400 of them. Some are stable, some are unstable. But you get iron, nickel, chromium, cobalt, zirconium, galenium, strontium, tin, selenium, galenium, zirconium, zinc, krypton, strontium, arsenic, krypton, selenium, rubidium, zirconium again. Wow, there's so many of them. Bunch of different silicones coming off of it. Bunch of magnesiums and sodiums. There's even an O16. There's an oxygen molecule that comes off of this process. 1, 2, 3 oxygen molecules, 16, 17, and 18. lithium, molybdenum, ruthenium, cadmium, selenium, strontium, bunch of different xenons. Even gold is created, believe it or not. What else do we got here? Oh my goodness, this list is huge. It is amazing to me that, and I don't even see plutonium yet. So I wonder what the half-life, if there's going all the way to the top. Decay energy, decay mode, half-life, here we go. So there's a bunch of stable ones. And half-life would be SF, whatever that is. No, still no half-life. They don't, oh, here we go. 9.47 times 10 to the 28th years, beta emitter. Is that a lot of years? How about 10 to the, wow. 10 to the 26th power, that's what I'm seeing. The 10 with 26 zeros after it, years. Two or three or six times, 5.68 times 10 to the 25th power, years. And this is just a few of them, you know. I'm looking for here plutonium. .183 times 10 to the 13th power. So as you can see, here's another plutonium. 239 is 6.406 times 10 to the 11th power, number of years. Plutonium 240 is 2.0 times 10 to the 11th, so it's got 11 zeros after it. Do the math with that. You know, you do your math and you're going to find that we are creating a monument. This is our monument. We can't do anything about it. We can't even get close enough to do anything about it unless we have some magical cure. Then we're basically going to have to just deal with it and let it spread pollution systematically as the eons go by, you know, as the millennia pass. You know, we think in terms of 10 or 20 years or 40 or 100 years, and I'm thinking in terms of 1,000 years. And then multiply that times 10, and then multiply that times 10 again. Keep going 11 times, or 5 times in that case. So that's a huge, huge, giant amount. That's all I can say, folks. I'm very disappointed in humanity for creating this mess and having no plan to get rid of it. Nothing. There is no plan. You know, we go, well, you got to put it underground. Well, that's obvious, or something. You can't. There is no known material that holds it, you know, except for concrete. You know, but concrete is degraded by neutron radiation. Okay, the hydrogen in concrete is disintegrated, and that's why they use concrete to block neutron radiation, is because the hydrogen absorbs more neutrons than it can get through. But when the hydrogen's gone, all of a sudden, cement and Portland cement and concrete become pretty much transparent to radiation once the hydrogen's been metabolized. But once that happens, you have a pile of dust too. So very radioactive dust, by the way. You know, so that's what we got going on at Fukushima. We've got basically all these long-lived isotopes around. They're underneath the reactor. they're creating a neutron flux, a neutron flow, because of all of the disintegrations of the 400 plus nuclides that are created when you fission nuclear fuel. From uranium, you get all that. You get everything. You know, it is kind of amazing. You know, I'm amazed by nuclear physics in some ways. You know, it's fascinating understanding the very essence of matter. You know, having an understanding of that kind of gives you a feeling of, for me at least, a feeling of kind of completeness. Like I needed that information in my head. Because the nature of the universe, the nature of atoms, it's all interconnected. And it's all really circular. And it's basically a central nucleus with objects flying around the central nucleus. If you look at the whole, all the way from the subatomic, all the way to the biggest things, which are galaxies, you see it. You see their spirals. They go to the center. There's something in the middle. There's always a central core around which everything else fluctuates and gravitates, and at the same time orbits, and so exists. So it is amazing. You know, I have to admit. So, you know, our donation to the future species on this planet is, so far, 4 melted nuclear cores and melted ice caps. You know, pretty much melted ice caps. You know, I would say within 40 or 50 years, probably see snow-free Greenland, or damn near. Maybe in the middle there'll be a pile of snow, or towards the north end of the island. But yeah, it is. It's getting ugly, folks, and we're causing it. And there's nothing in heaven or earth that's going to cause a person to give up their carbon footprint. You know, it's not going to happen. And even, let's say, in America, the people who are hearing my voice, if any, at this moment, if every single one of you said, that's it, okay, I'm going to sell my car, and I'm going to ride a bike, I'm going to try to not burn any fossil fuels, I'm going to recycle all my plastic and try not to buy anything that is manufactured with fossil fuels or crude oil, because most plastics, many medications, so many different things have petroleum products in them. That's what they call them, petroleum products. So even if everybody in America did that, I don't think that would make the difference, because other places, other countries, other cultures would pick up where we left off. You know, so, and it doesn't matter. We're going to burn it all till it's gone. Every drop is either going to get burnt or turned into some product. Every drop of crude oil that we can find. I mean, think about fracking. Think about the implications of that. You know, and how that affects the environmental systems, and how desperate we are to have to do that. You know, because that costs a lot of money. It costs a lot of money to pump and extract and plan it out and do the geology of it. So if I know human nature, and human nature is basically we're a lazy species. And if we can, we'll always do it the easiest way. So what we're doing is not easy. That's hard. We wish it was like in the old days when you could just poke a stick in the ground and get oil out, but now you got to pump it, and then now pumping it's not working so good. So somebody came up, well, maybe we'll inject water and then we'll pump it out with the water because it floats on the water, and so that's where we are. Don't delude yourself into thinking that you are somehow that there's enough oil to kill the planet. There isn't. I don't think there is. And that's on the other hand. Once we've quit burning this stuff, everything will reset. It will. That's the way the planet is. Once the outside forcing is gone, then the climate will revert back to whatever is natural at that point. So we're only screwing ourselves in the process. We really are. But as I said before, you can't fight the human need for energy. There's a need for energy we have as humanity. We need it. If we don't have it, we die. So basically, just by our very existence, we must corrupt the planet. That's the way it is. And that's the way it goes. And there's ever more of us than there used to be. And as every human, every single one of us is subject to the same needs for the fossil fuel industry. And from what I can see, by the time we get to 2040, it's going to go down proportionally and steeply at about 2035, 2040. And by the time we get to 2100, there'll be almost no crude oil left. Nobody will be able to burn it anymore. So we've burned up almost all the dead dinosaurs, and that's according to Wikipedia. I don't know, maybe that's not the smartest source, but it's a convenient one. What about peak coal? I wonder, I've never looked this up. Peak coal. Peak coal. Here we go. Wikipedia again. Says the estimates vary widely, but it could occur in 200 years or more. 2009, they said it would be by 2048. That kind of makes sense. So it'll be about the same time. About 2050, all of a sudden, we're going to run out of oil. What are we going to do? How are we going to lubricate things? Can't use any animal products for that. We're going to have to create everything without oil. All the lubricants and plastics and vinyls and nylons and other beautiful, magical, oftentimes really good for the world materials are going to go away because we won't have the crude oil to make them anymore. The days of cheap plastic toys will be, oh, you got a plastic one? Whoa, aren't you fancy? Think about it. That won't be 1,000 years down the road. That'll be 40 to 50 years. It'll be like, well, there's not enough coal to burn in a power plant anymore effectively. We don't have enough oil, and you can't really operate a motor vehicle using oil anymore. So within 40 to 50 years, it's kind of ironic that they're saying, okay, in 40 to 50 years, we're going to reach the tipping point and lose the polar caps. But then on the other hand, and about that time, we finish burning up all the oil, and it will go up exponentially because the number of humans on the planet is increasing exponentially. So it's all going to reach a tipping point. But at the same time, okay, we're going to be out of oil. So it's going to be like, okay, so we've destroyed the climate systems, but now we're out of oil. We can't do that anymore. And also keep in mind that as the tipping point comes, and people, and maybe this is a hopeful point, people start to realize that, oh wow, gas is $5 or $6 or $10 a gallon. I got to get an electric car, or solar. I got to get some solar panels on my roof to charge my electric car, because electricity is expensive too, because coal's rare. As soon as that starts happening, people are going to create solutions. That's the way humans are. We're not really well known for creating solutions ahead of the problem. Once the problem occurs, then we create solutions. So that's what I see occurring. I see that all during that period of time, as long as we don't destroy ourselves with war, but I don't really fear for that for some reason. I don't know why. I don't really fear war. I don't think that that's likely to happen. At least an extinction level war. I don't see that as likely to happen. And if it does, it does. So we can be kind of hopeful, but we need to be prepared. And so maybe you can call me the cynical environmentalist right now, because I feel kind of like, okay, so we're gonna reach a climax wherein the carbon level increases to the point that it creates issues climactically on a large scale. But at the same time, we're going to be running out of the very product that we need to create the gas, and is creating the problem on a large scale. And so the amount of gas, just naturally speaking, that we will be producing will decrease in proportion to the amount of fossil fuels that we're able to pull out of the ground. And the fewer we can pull out, the lower our output is going to be. And that is really and literally the only thing that's going to stop it. And, perhaps that's okay. Perhaps we need to go through that. Perhaps that'll provide a lesson, but we'll end up okay in the end of it, because everything will reset itself once we go to an all electric economy without burning anything for power. Of course that will mean that we're going to have to figure out a way to get energy from somewhere. And if you think about it, where's a source of readily available energy that would be massive enough to sustain the human race? And I would have to say that you got to start looking at every other available. Solar is a great one. Use the energy, some of the energy that exists on the planet. There's probably technologies in the universe where they use the very gravitational field of the planet itself and the fluctuations of that to produce a current. There's energy all around us. We just have to figure out how to get at it correctly. Fissioning it, not a good way. Not a good way. It's too messy. We're like a bunch of little kids running around with a can of paint. Just not a good thing. We're going to end up messing stuff up, and it'll take a long time to get better. And the more you smear it out evenly, it's the same thing. It's just smeared out evenly. So, I don't know how. That's not the problem, is it? So I don't think global warming is the problem that people think it is. I think it's a huge thing. I think we're going to have tons of issues with it, but it will right itself in the end. Okay. The negative feedback loop of, oh, we're running out of oil, oh, we're out of oil, okay, now it's all in the atmosphere, what are you going to do? I would say that plants will absorb a bit of it, and a lot of it will go into the oceans, and a lot of it will probably rain out and form calcium carbonate, which is what happened last time around, that it was really high, but it still won't be anything like 7,000 parts per million. I don't see that happening. So there's just not that much carbon dioxide, carbon available for that amount. So I think that'll right itself, but the nuclear problem won't right itself. Okay, the fact that we will get continued ice melt, and when we do, we will get sea level rise, and when we do, these casks, for instance, in San Onofre, right off, like, what is it, like 3 feet above high tide, I think, or something like that, are going to flood. And when they do, they're going to emit massive amounts of radionuclides out into the environment. They aren't sealed up, they're vented. And so they're constantly venting, I think, tritium into the atmosphere. And tritium is going into our water. It's like every 20th molecule is now tritium. We are destroying the very essence of life on our planet. The hopeful thing is that life has a way of surviving despite the kinds of problems that we have. If you go to Chernobyl and look around, there's lots of life in Chernobyl right now. I haven't actually looked around close to the power plant, but I imagine that there's, now that the humans are all gone, whatever that city is near the plant, I forget the name of it, the giant abandoned city, it's pretty much just overgrown now. But I've actually heard that dogs don't live long there. They die very quickly. They only live about 4 years or 5 years, and they die. And other animals, they don't have long lifespans. That's maybe one of the differences that you could indicate right there, is that the lifespans of the creatures involved is going to be smaller. Let's see if I can find Chernobyl. Just have a quick look here. Okay, Chernobyl in Ukraine. And we're off. I wish you guys could see this. Google Earth is so cool. The Pro model, where you're not online. Or you are online, but you're not like in a browser. You're in an actual standalone. All right, there she blows. So I'm looking at Chernobyl. I'm looking around for a reactor. There's got to be one here. Unless they've really got it hidden well. Maybe I don't even have the right spot. Is that possible? I don't think so. Well, at any rate, I'm going to zoom in on the town and see if I can get a street view of the town. You can sometimes, but not often. And no. So it is definitely off limits. There's no people alive in Chernobyl at all. I see the remains. This is kind of an interesting study in the effects of humans leaving an area. Oh, there we go. I got an actual picture. Street view. Nice little Russian houses, cottages. All the houses have all the windows broken out. But you could see it was quite a pleasant little village. It's too bad about that. It really is. It's too bad about that. But yeah, I'm seeing tons of foliage, overgrown, literally overgrown with foliage. You know, literally overgrown. What used to be a street looks like a path through the woods. Just amazingly overgrown, and almost all the asphalt's gone. It's just pretty much dirt now with trees on either side, and lots of trees. Lots of undergrowth, lots of flowers, lots of plants. So, I don't know, it's been what, 20 years, 30 years? Life goes on. If there were no humans, then life would basically just re-evolve and adapt around that environment. You know, so it's I find it kind of ironic that we are so susceptible to damage that if you or I were to wander around in these beautiful green woods and sit down and eat a picnic and on this beautiful sunny day in summer in Chernobyl, Ukraine, we would be subjecting ourselves to pollution from things that we have no understanding of. You know, things you can't taste or see or smell. You know, as beautiful and sweet as the air must be, it is laced with radiation. I see one car pulled over here. So apparently there's some people hanging out in this area. But pretty much every house, every single house, has all the windows broken out. There isn't a mowed lawn anywhere in sight. It's all just completely overgrown. So, you know, if you think about it, that's just too bad, you know. And now if I zoom out, I'm going to zoom back in. And keep in mind that those villages are worth a lot of money. That land is valuable land. The Russian government would love to move people back in there, but they just can't. Okay. So there's a little town called Futaba, which is very close to Fukushima, the power plant. It was literally right in the plume. But I'm going to see if I'm able to get in and have a look at Futaba and see if we got people. My guess is that the Japanese government... Alrighty, Futaba. Piles of garbage, overgrown, windows all intact. But very closed down. Very closed down. This is deserted. Because it's just too radioactive for our complex DNA to handle. All the shops are closed. There's piles of garbage and junk everywhere. Weeds on the side of the road. Something you would never find. Pre-2011 there. You know, again, I encourage everybody to get a copy of this Google Earth Pro. It's free. And just have a look around in places, in different countries, in different cities. You know, look around in Japan in places that didn't get so affected by the tsunami. You know, places south of Tokyo, and you'll find that they're very tidy, very neat. They are neat people. As a matter of fact, I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to zoom back out, and then I'm going to try to find a town far enough away to where it's not affected by this monstrosity like all the way over, clear on the other side of the island. Find a little town. There's one. All right. So now I'm zooming in on this little town. And it looks like another little Japanese village. And it is clear on the other side of the island from... Okay. Now, if you were to have a look at this photograph, and I wish you guys could see it, you would see pristine. Everything is neat and tidy. The trees are all sculpted in strange ways. I call it Japanesey. They're very beautiful, neat, tidy people. But that is that. So we basically fried Japan. General Electric fried Japan. Japan's fried. There'll be parts of it that'll be adaptable. You know, as far as the Chernobyl area, you know, we could move humans in, but it would lower the lifespan of your typical human to 40 or 50 before you got cancer or heart disease or something and died. The ionization damage would just be too intense. Even now, how many years later, after the fact? You know, they consider that there are places that will be no-go zones for the next 500 years. That little town in Chernobyl, probably since the reactor in Chernobyl exploded the way it did, then it sent out literal fuel debris over a large area, very large area. And so there's little bits and pieces of plutonium and uranium and other of those bothersome long-lived isotopes that we've been talking about, scattered far and wide. And, you know, though on an individual level, externally, you're not going to get much, you know, alpha or beta from a fragment of uranium. You know, if it's taken internally, you know, then all of a sudden, then it lodges and it'll stick in your muscle or other tissue or your heart and ionize all of the atoms around it. And all the atoms around it will malform because the DNA loses the ability to reproduce effectively when you ionize it. You know, and it's cumulative. Every time an ion is created, every time a neutron or other ionizing radiation flies through an atom and rips off one of the electrons, it breaks the bonds with the other atoms around it because of the electron bonding effect. It has to be very perfect magnetically, and so it can create other issues and other problems magnetically, you know, and that destroys DNA, and it just takes out a little piece of it, and it may be that the cell can still replicate okay, but eventually enough little ACTGs get popped loose, enough strands get broken in between, then all of a sudden you start losing the ability for all the systems within the DNA to work together to generate normal cells, and the cells that are generated will start to die. Okay, that's the danger of radiation poisoning, is that it literally breaks apart the atoms in our bodies and creates a gap in the genetic code that makes us who we are and allows us to be self-replicating and self-maintaining. Okay, you can't maintain a cell that's got broken DNA. It'll die. You know, depending on how badly it's broken, which is why they say it's cumulative. You know, you won't even notice it, but every time you get an X-ray or something, you're blasting your DNA apart. And it could indeed cause cancer. And I'm sure they make you sign something before they give it to you, or there's some unspoken protection that they're under, So, yeah, I encourage everybody to try to dig into particle nuclear physics and look around a little bit and just try to understand it. And I think that will help bring an understanding as to the dangers of it. It becomes much less of a boogeyman once you understand exactly what's going on there. And how did we as a species figure that out? How did we do it? And seriously, how in the heck did that happen? I haven't got a clue. We just figured that out. We went from, goodness, 1700 was fairly primitive. Okay. There's no electricity, no thought of electricity. There was, we might have been pulling oil out of pools at that point, maybe had small wells, but not really. Coal oil was the thing. We were digging up coal back then. And how do we get from that in 200 years to nuclear physics, this fissioning of atoms, and the understanding of not only the basics of matter, but the sub-basics of matter. Like I learned a little very interesting thing about protons and neutrons and electrons are made of these little subatomic particles, and I forget what they're called. Quarks, I believe. Yeah, and some of them are up, and some of them are down. And instead of having a positive charge or a negative charge, they have the up quark has 2/3 of a positive charge. The down quark has 1/3 of a negative charge. Okay, and so within the neutron, for instance, okay, you've got 2 ups and a down. Okay, that's what's inside of the neutron. It's 2 up quarks and a down quark. The 2 up quarks, if you put them together, are hold it. 2 ups is 2/3. So that would be 4/3 altogether. Okay, but then the down quark is minus 1/3, and so that makes it 3/3 or 1, which is a neutral. So it's amazing. It's amazing to me. And of course that's such a simplistic view and look at it, but you know what? I don't care. My name is Jerome. I am the Sane Environmentalist. Please visit me over on youtube.com. You can find me there, the Sane Environmentalist at YouTube. I do wandering videos, rambling videos. I will be moving to Eugene, Oregon. So Eugene, Oregon, look forward to seeing me very soon. I hope everybody has a good day. And just remember that life is good.